Does Solskjaer deserve the sack, and who is right, Gary Neville or Micah Richards? For cheap good quality football jerseys, retro jerseys and tracksuits, go over to www.jerseyfifa.com, a link will be left in the description, and use code ATLANTISFOOTBALL to get 5% off. So just to give some context, this debate is from after the Manchester derby between Gary Neville and Micah Richards, and before Gary starts talking in this clip, Micah Richards alludes to Solskjaer maybe deserving the sack, and if you've watched Gary Neville over the last few weeks, he did a debate with Jamie Carragher after the Liverpool loss, and I have got a video coming on that, so if that video is out, it will be linked in the description below. If not, subscribe and click the bell to get notified when that video comes out. But in that, you can clearly see that Gary Neville seems to be very anti-sacking managers, and sacking Manchester United managers in particular. So Gary Neville gets asked a question whether the problem is the manager and whether Solskjaer deserves a sack, and you'll see instantly that even he knows he can't make a valid argument to keep Solskjaer in a job, so what he does instead is he tries to deflect blame, pointing out bigger problems at the club rather than actually isolating and dealing with the actual issues on the pitch.
Look, it's not a board, it's not an executive or management team that's got any experience of winning trophies. You know, you look right the way through sort of what would be the football department of the club, whether it be recruitment, whether it be the sort of CEO, the decision makers. None of them have got success of delivering titles in football clubs. So I think there's an element of them not knowing what to do. They'll be very unsure at this moment in time about what to do, because in the past, over the last 9 years, that same group of people have sacked managers after 8 months in David Moyes. They've then obviously sacked a manager after winning an FA Cup final. They've sacked Jose Mourinho after giving him a new contract and not support him in a transfer market. I suspect there is a real sort of what will be yo-yo going on in their minds, and they haven't got the experience, I don't think, to be able to deal with it.
So you see here, instead of even talking about the Solskjaer situation and whether he does deserve blame or even the sack, he straight away goes to the board, which is highlighting a macro problem rather than giving an assessment on the micro problem, which is what everyone's talking about at the moment. Whilst the Manchester United board may be responsible for the overall success of the club over the last decade or so, and maybe even this season, as you could say they should have appointed a director of football to bring in the right players, you can't really put the blame on them for the individual games against Liverpool and Manchester City. This summer it appears that they've brought in the players that Solskjaer wanted. They brought in Varane, a top level centre back, they brought in Cristiano Ronaldo and Jadon Sancho, who Solskjaer and Manchester United over the past few years have been after, so they definitely backed him in this transfer window, and Solskjaer has had the last 3 seasons to bring in players, so you can't really say he hasn't been backed. Maybe you could say he's not being backed to the extent that Manchester United possibly could, or that there isn't a strategy in place to bring in the right players, but Solskjaer has been manager for the last 3 seasons, so he's got to take some responsibility for the players being brought in. He can't sit back and do what Jose Mourinho did, because he's gone along with this for the last 3 seasons. If he didn't get the players he wanted, he should have come out and said it. He can't just keep going along, being the Glazers' sort of puppet, but that seems to be what's happening, because he hasn't been playing Donny van de Beek, and Jadon Sancho has fallen out of favour as well. So these are 2 quite big signings over the last 2 seasons that Solskjaer just isn't using at all, or even really attempting to get the best out of. But nevertheless, the transfers aren't the issue in this situation. Just because Manchester United didn't bring in a central midfielder doesn't mean they should be losing 5-0 to Liverpool and getting completely dominated by Manchester City. The players that Solskjaer has at his disposal are more than good enough to be competing with the top level sides. If you look at the attacking players that Manchester United have, Pogba, Fernandes, Rashford, Ronaldo, Cavani, Sancho, Martial, Van de Beek, Greenwood, that's more than capable of competing with the likes of Liverpool and Manchester City. But more than that, I don't think the transfer excuse can even be put into place to save Solskjaer. If you look at the players that he's willingly brought into the club, Wan-Bissaka and Harry Maguire, they've been the main 2 players that fought in the last few games. Most of all, it was the system that cost United against Manchester City and Liverpool, not necessarily individual mistakes, even though that did contribute to it, but those were exacerbated by how bad the systems were. If you look at the Liverpool goal, which I did do a brief analysis of, looking at all the goals, analysing them and the mistakes in it, you'll see that most of them stem from pressing mistakes. If you look at the first goal, I think it was against Liverpool, Greenwood pushed out too late, and that forced Wan-Bissaka to push out too late, and in the end both players were caught in no man's land. It was easy for Liverpool to play around, and the same thing happened against Manchester City. The ball got worked out to the flank, and Wan-Bissaka is clearly unsure on what he's meant to be doing. He seemed to push up halfway and get caught in 2 minds of what to do, and that just comes down to the training ground. You can blame Wan-Bissaka, but you have to really put most of the blame with the manager. The manager's there to drill in the system to the players, and if the players do make constant mistakes, which is what Manchester United are doing, not just in each game, but from game to game. So that has to come down to the manager. But that isn't to say I don't think that Gary Neville's making a fair point here. I do think that if Manchester United had Zidane, Erik ten Hag, Conte, Allegri, whoever as manager, they would still see recurring issues over the next 3 to 5 years. If you look at Liverpool and Manchester City, which Gary Neville points out later on in this, which I will come on to, he rightly points out that it's how they are managed off the pitch, which directly affects their success over the past decade or so.
And they just haven't got, they're not as good as Manchester City and Liverpool off the pitch. So Manchester City and Liverpool are better on the pitch, but this comes from the top. Ollie's a function of what's happening right the way through the club in terms of the last 8 to 9 years, since obviously Sir Alex Ferguson and David Gill left, who were successful with the players that they had. And then when they left, it's been a mess since, and I think we're just seeing a continuation of that.
Right, so what Gary Neville is actually saying here is that Solskjaer is a continuation of the problems that have occurred since Ferguson and Gill left. Now what he means by this is that essentially Sir Alex Ferguson's talent and David Gill's talent as well managed to paper over a lot of the cracks that were there under the Glazer management, but when they left, the cracks started to appear. And when he says that Solskjaer is a function of that, what he's basically saying is that Solskjaer's appointment was a mismanagement. It should never have been done. Now he's not actually going to come out and say that, obviously. He doesn't even like saying managers should be sacked. So I don't think he's going to come out and say a manager should have never been appointed. But what you can kind of hear in his voice and through the words he's saying is that if Manchester United were run properly, Solskjaer would never have been manager.
This is why my view at the moment is a new manager could come in here and I think he could end up exactly the same. And I think that's what they'll think, and they'll just end up going to the end of the season. I think I said a few weeks ago, Manchester United have to try and resurrect this season and get to the end of the season and then have a look at it and reset at that point. I'm not quite sure what Micah's saying. I know the point he's making, but is he saying that the manager should be sacked tomorrow?
So what Gary Neville's essentially saying here is that I'm not sure whether he's saying he thinks this will happen or this should happen, but he thinks the board will stick with Ollie for the rest of the season and then reset after that. But that's just a complete waste of a season. We're only 10, 11 games into the season. United are going to qualify for the Champions League. So essentially by doing that, you're throwing away the whole season. You may get top 4 with Ollie, but you're not going to win the Champions League or win the title. So what is the point in just keeping him for the rest of the season? There's literally no point in doing that. And he elaborates on why. I'm not sure whether he thinks this is his personal belief or what he thinks the board are thinking. He's basically saying that why would the board want to sack Solskjaer, because they've sacked managers before and they brought in another manager and it didn't work. But that's obviously just ridiculous. You're not just going to keep a manager because you've previously sacked managers. You've not appointed every manager in the world. You've only appointed Van Gaal, David Moyes and Jose Mourinho before Solskjaer. That's only 3 managers. And none of those managers, when they came, maybe apart from Mourinho to be fair, but certainly Van Gaal and Moyes were not top level managers at the same level as you look at managers like Pochettino and Zidane, and even Conte was available. Van Gaal and David Moyes and even Solskjaer as well were not at that level, so it doesn't make any sense really. But what Gary Neville is doing, he's more trying to defend Solskjaer's job as though he's his personal publicist or something, rather than giving an actual educated football opinion. He seems to have voided his whole responsibility as a pundit and gone straight to defending Solskjaer. And even his arguments that he's making, he knows that the arguments he's making aren't going to hold any water from a footballing point of view. So he's got to sort of deflect the main issue and put the blame on the board rather than on Solskjaer. If you're looking at it from a micro point of view, such as why Manchester United lost 5-0 to Liverpool or lost to Manchester City, or why they are so far off the top, that's really got nothing with the board at the moment. It's all down to Ollie.
Managers get sacked for these sort of performances. Every time we come to Man United, it's it's the players, or Pogba's not running, or it's Lindelof. Or at the end of the day, the manager's at the helm. He got the players. He goes out and tells them what to do. Performances like this against Liverpool and Man City have not been good enough. Yes, it might start from the very top, but the manager works day in, day out with these players. He must know the best of, like Van der Beek. Van der Beek is on the bench. When he's on the bench, the fans are clapping him coming on, saying, why is he not getting a chance? We have the same conversation every single time.
But Micah, you sound more wound up than me. I mean, the fact of the matter is you're still saying you wouldn't sack him. So what you're saying different than we're saying. We're as annoyed with that performance as you are. That was a shocker.
I'm not saying I wouldn't sack, because I would never say to sack any manager, because I don't think that's right.
So you're not saying anything different than we are?
I'm just saying what I'm seeing out there for the standards of Man United is not good enough.
What Micah Richards was saying here is exactly correct. Managers get sacked for those sort of performances regularly. It's not like Manchester United at the top of the table and have just lost one game. This has been going on for pretty much a few seasons now, the same sort of recurring issues, and even this season they've really fallen off from where they were last season. So I'm not actually sure what Gary Neville's actual policy is on managers getting sacked. Does he just think managers should never be sacked?
Do you think another manager could do a better job with this squad of players than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer?
Of course I could. Of course I could. But let's be real about the situation.
Now here Micah Richards is basically saying that he thinks Solskjaer should get sacked, but he just doesn't want to say it in those words. And I don't really know what's going on with the Sky pundits. For some reason they're beating around the question. They really are acting like politicians on Question Time here. But Micah Richards is basically saying that Solskjaer should be sacked because he thinks there are better managers out there. And I think even Gary Neville would concede that point. And if that point is conceded, surely you have to concede that Solskjaer should be sacked and Manchester United should go out and get one of those managers.
Let me ask you a question, Gary. Do you think there's better managers out there who are better fit for Manchester United?
I thought Jose Mourinho's a better manager than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I thought Louis van Gaal was. David Moyes was. They've all had better pedigrees than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. However, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has finished second in the league last season and has gained possession, so there's no science to that question, Micah. There are better managers. Of course there are better managers in terms of credentials and on paper, but the confusion that exists at this club at this moment in time is that they've gone for two managers previously, have got world-class credentials, and that shouldn't stop them doing it again. But I think that's where the confusion or the hesitancy comes from the board, that they've been down this route of bringing in a Mourinho before, so they wouldn't bring in a Conte because they've been burnt by that.
Gary, were those managers, Mourinho and Van Gaal, 'cause I've heard you say this, were those managers, Mourinho and Van Gaal, at the top of their game? Yes, they had been super coaches, if you like. They had won trophies. Mourinho won trophies at Manchester United. Van Gaal won the FA Cup at Manchester United. But were they managers at the very top of their game?
But who would they get now, Kelly? So if you couldn't
that's not what I'm asking.
No, but what I'm saying to you is, if you say now, okay, Pochettino's got a sort of what would be a lack of trophies on his CV to say that should he come and manage Manchester United? Because I know what would happen if he didn't. Well, he didn't win trophies before he came. So I think the problem you've got now at Manchester United is the confusion and hesitancy that exists in the boardroom is what happened in the last 8 to 10 years. There's a lack of decisiveness at the top of knowing what to do and how to make the right decision. They're unsure.
So you see here, Gary Neville often refers to this when he's defending a manager, particularly Manchester United managers. He's basically saying, well, he thought Mourinho and Van Gaal were better managers than Solskjaer, and they turned out to not be good enough for the job, so let's just not appoint another world-class manager, which is, again, ridiculous. But throughout that clip, he's basically alluding to the fact that he doesn't think the board really know what they're doing, so there's no point sacking Solskjaer because they'll just appoint the wrong person, which again is just ridiculous again. But he then goes on to say, well, who out there would you appoint? Which again is a problem with Sky Sports pundits. They seem to have no knowledge of football outside the Premier League. Like, you could name a lot of managers. He names Pochettino in that clip, but Pochettino isn't really even in the top 3 managers who people are mostly linking with the Manchester United job. There's Zidane, Erik ten Hag, and it was Conte before Tottenham, but it's probably someone like maybe Ralph Rangnick. But Gary Neville doesn't even mention those at all. Zidane's won the Champions League, he's won La Liga, and I think Gary Neville purposely didn't mention Zidane because he knew it would counter his own point. Zidane's got the resume to come in and be Manchester United manager at any era, apart from when Ferguson was there, obviously. But to take over from Ferguson, Zidane would have been in the mix then, as he should have been after Mourinho. But what Neville is basically saying here is that he doesn't really have a clear fit for the job, so you might as well just keep Solskjaer. But that's not really an excuse, because this has been coming since Solskjaer really came into the job. There's been discussions over managers replacing him. So just because you personally don't know the right manager to come in doesn't really mean that we should just keep Solskjaer and just waste another season. So thank you for watching. I have got another Gary Neville debate to give my opinion on. It's the one after the Liverpool game with Jamie Carragher. So if that video's out, it will be linked in the description below. If not, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell for notifications so you get notified when that video comes out. And give the video a like and put your thoughts in the comment section below as well.